A father knelt on the ground, encouraging his little daughter to jump into his arms. The baby girl leaped toward him, and suddenly transformed into a tiny bat. The father was overjoyed, because this father was none other than Dracula himself, and the little bat flying before him was his beloved daughter, Mavis. Whenever he got bored, he would pretend to be terrifying monsters just to scare her, but the moment she started crying, he instantly panicked. He would gently pick her up, sing her lullabies, carefully lay her on a cushion, then skillfully use magic to change her diaper like a pro. Even with his aching old back, he still played with his daughter every day. Before bedtime, he always told her stories. To outsiders, Dracula was cold and terrifying, but in front of his daughter, he was nothing more than a sweet and loving dad. He would give Mavis anything she wanted, with one exception. She was absolutely forbidden from leaving home. According to Dracula, the outside world was far too dangerous. To better protect his daughter, he hired a zombie construction crew to build a 5-star castle. In front of the castle stretched 400 acres of haunted forest, while every other direction was surrounded by forbidden undead territory. No human could ever get close. This was a promise Dracula had made to his late wife, to build their daughter a palace, where humans could never hurt her. More than a century passed. The castle welcomed countless guests, and Dracula was especially excited today. He planned to throw the greatest birthday party ever for Mavis. One by one, his old monster friends arrived. First came the werewolf couple, bringing along an entire pack of wild wolf pups. Next was Frankenstein. To save money on travel expenses, he literally shipped himself in separate body parts through the mail. Then came the Invisible Man, who was impossible to see without his glasses. Finally, the Mummy arrived, as always carrying a huge pile of exotic gifts. The old friends were thrilled to reunite. And of course, that meant non-stop pranks. Frankenstein secretly released a horrible smell behind the mummy, which instantly enraged Dracula, the clean freak of the group. The poor mummy desperately tried to explain himself, but nobody believed him. Dracula called in the cleaning crew to remove the odor, but the method they used was completely wrong. The smell got blasted right back out. The mummy had barely started flirting with a beautiful woman, before getting blamed all over again. Once all the guests had arrived, Dracula began giving an anti-human speech. According to his research, humans kept getting fatter, so they could crush monsters more easily, and humans wore less clothing every year, to move more freely while attacking monsters. The creatures inside the castle were completely terrified by humans. After finishing his speech, Dracula announced he was going to check on his daughter. But this year, Mavis was already 118 years old. She desperately wanted to leave the castle and explore the outside world. For 30 years, Dracula had rejected her request, but this time, he surprisingly agreed. Mavis immediately hugged her father in excitement. She had waited for this day forever. Within seconds, she packed her bags and prepared to fly into the new world. Dracula quickly stopped her and asked where she planned to go. Mavis happily replied, "To paradise." Dracula looked completely confused. Mavis pulled out a photo, and Dracula explained that it was actually Hawaii. He tried persuading her to stay, reminding her that everyone had come to celebrate her birthday. But Mavis was tired of the same old parties. She wanted to experience something new. She dreamed about the outside world. She wanted friends her own age. Seeing the tears welling up in his daughter's eyes, Dracula's heart nearly shattered. Finally, he suggested she visit a nearby human village first. That way, she could still make it back for the birthday party. At that moment, Dracula's monster friends burst into the room. When they heard Mavis was going to a human town, everyone was horrified. Since nobody could stop her, they told her to arm herself, and warned her to be careful of human fire. Filled with excitement, Mavis flew away from the castle. Back inside, the monsters were still wondering how Dracula could possibly allow his precious daughter near humans. But when they turned around, Dracula had already disappeared. Mavis happily traveled all the way to the village her father had told her about. But the town was completely empty. She wandered over to a shop window and admired the mannequins inside. Suddenly, a man appeared behind her holding a torch. At last, Mavis had finally met a human. Her surprise quickly turned into excitement, and she tried to greet him. But suddenly, every light in the village went out. Large crowds emerged from the shadows, holding torches and pitchforks, as they slowly surrounded her. No matter how hard Mavis tried to explain herself, they kept moving closer. When she turned around, she realized she was completely surrounded. The villagers attacked her with garlic bread and flaming torches. Then suddenly, one villager's head was pierced by a pitchfork. Mavis froze in terror. As the man collapsed, his torch set the crowd on fire. Mavis tried to help them, but the burning villagers still kept advancing toward her. At that moment, she finally realized her father had been right all along. Humans really were terrifying. Heartbroken, she flew back to the castle. Once home, Mavis buried herself in Dracula's arms, sobbing that she should never have doubted him. But Dracula secretly smiled, because from the very moment Mavis left the castle, he had been hiding nearby the entire time. Terrified that humans might hurt his daughter, he had staged the whole thing himself. He actually built a fake village, then hired zombies to pretend to be humans, just to scare Mavis away from the outside world. The reason Dracula feared humans so much was because his wife had been killed by them. He once stood before her portrait and said, "Humans are the real monsters." But what Dracula never expected was that someone even scarier than monsters themselves was about to enter the castle.
Who are you, and how did you find this place?